Welcome back to another episode of STEM in Stilettos. I'm your host, Zofia Morales, and today we are going to discuss the one skill that has the power to change everything, like one ring to rule them all. And our guest today is Wandana Puranik. Puranik. Puranik, I'll get it.
Yeah, it's all good.
Wandana Puranik. Before I go into deep introduction of her, I would like to invite you to get to know your own self a little bit better and take 60 seconds to go out and take the what is your number one leadership pitfall quiz. You can find that at leadershippitfallquiz.com. That's leadershippitfallquiz.com. So give yourself the 60 seconds and the gift of insight. Our guest today, Wandana Puranik, is
Mm,
a thinkfluencer, idea architect, brand and business builder, which is why I really wanted to have her here today because this is what we do over here. We build amazing businesses in our likeness because we are women and we are powerful and we have amazing ideas that need to come out into the world to make it a better place. And I brought Wandana because she has 25 years of shaking up industries from multi-million and multinationals to bold startups with 100% success, which is a strong statement.
mhm.
So, whether building businesses from scratch or rescuing ones in free fall or catapulting others into the stratosphere, she is the strategist you want in your corner. She's fueled by unrelenting curiosity and a global perspective, and her experiences are across continents and cultures and gives her a unique edge in decoding human insights. She has a knack for distilling chaos into clarity and clarity into vision and vision into groundbreaking reality. USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestselling co-author and international speaker, including TEDx, Wandana works with forward thinking individuals to break through the impossible. Her unique success model empowers people to discover their own limitless path. She's the founder of Active Ingredients, and this is what she said.com. Wandana, I'm so happy to have you here with me today.
Thank you so much. Wow, that was an amazing introduction. And I'm hoping that everybody had 60 seconds to complete the quiz in that time.
Well, we'll have a commercial break coming up where there will be an opportunity to do the quiz. And
Oh,
so that
okay.
will work out well.
Okay.
Generally does.
All right.
So, all right. Tell me a little bit about how you entered into the entrepreneurial realm, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you become this amazing like entrepreneur whisperer?
Oh, no, never been called that. It's interesting because I worked in the corporate world for a long time, including consulting and freelance work. So I did that for about 25 years. And then I kind of got bored because I felt like I was seeing the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah.
And blown away by the human capacity to brilliantly solve the wrong problems and doing it over and over and over again. I'm thinking like, why is it that we can't get past this type of thinking that,
Well, now give us an example of solving the wrong problem.
oh, I can give you a very simple example. Are you a gardener at all?
I am a gardener, as a matter of fact.
So you probably can relate to this, and I'm
Okay.
hoping a lot of people can because we've all done this from time to time, and that's pulling weeds.
Hmm.
So if you've got an amazing garden that you're tending and you've got weeds coming up every day and you go out there every day and you try to pull the weeds and you do a great job and lo and behold, the next day you've got more weeds.
By gosh, they're
Yeah.
persistent that way.
Yeah. But instead of just pulling the weeds, which is the symptom, if you actually, took care of the problem as to why the weeds were there and growing in the first place, in other words, solving for the outcome versus the problem,
Mhm.
you'd be, much further along and you'd have a lot more time to do all your home renovations.
Exactly. Put down some preen and some mulch and get on with life.
Yeah. But that's a really simple example. There's countless examples like that. It's just that sometimes we're not solving for the outcome, we're just really fixated on the problem.
Yeah.
And that's what leads to a lot of the issues. But
Yeah, I made a career of that when I was in corporate. I was the one that killed the problem as opposed to just dealt
yeah.
with it every night. It's like, yeah, no, I'm getting rid of this at its root. I'm not dealing with it. I'm not putting a band-aid on it every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because how inefficient is that? And how ineffective is that, right? Like if you can't move past that, that is a huge issue. The other thing is that when we become problem centric, we're so focused on the problem that any great information that comes in, you don't necessarily intake because you're cognitively rigid. And
Mm.
so therefore, you're creating a barrier before you even begin, really.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be in that situation. That's for
No,
sure.
that stinks.
It kind of stinks.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But you were asking me,
Yeah, you were saying that you got tired of that
yeah.
situation, which is part
So
of what moved you out of corporate and more
yeah.
into the entrepreneurial realm.
Yeah. And then I didn't think that there was, I mean, I was already consulting and freelancing, so there was that. And I thought that, I'd have a lot more time on my hands instead of being in a job because I'd had 3 kids and it's like, oh my God, I was so not right about that. So, but I think I probably spent way more.
Everyone in corporate goes, "Oh God, if only I could be my own boss." But
Yeah,
yeah,
totally different. I actually started to make a list too of, what do you get when you're in corporate or what do you know? And then what happens when you're in entrepreneurship? So when you're making the transition, what are the big things that, you really notice? And I'm happy to share that list at any time.
yeah.
It's just
Well,
time.
I tell us about that list. What's on that
Oh,
list? Let's bust some myths about
let's
what it
bust
is
some
to be
myths. Well,
self-employed and
time,
entrepreneurial.
we talked about time. We talked about
Yep.
the fact that, when you're in corporate, there's always somebody telling you what to do. Or they're
Mm-hmm.
saying, okay, we need 10% growth from you. Or we need, this project fixed or this problem fixed or whatever it is,
Yeah.
because they think that's the problem. And when you come into the entrepreneurial world, nobody is telling you what to do. You have to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
All
You
the
have
stuff.
to figure out what the next best thing to do is.
Yeah. And if it's business growth that you want, like you would in the corporate world, you have to find your own resources. You have to find your own, creativity. You have to find your own like-minded individuals that you can have, a conversation with.
Yeah.
So it's a really, really big change. And quite honestly, in the corporate world, you're using somebody else's money,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
right? And somebody in the entrepreneurial world, you're using your own money. And how scary is that? So
Yeah.
you're
Or I think personally, worse yet, your mother's money or your
yeah.
uncle's, yeah, or whoever your angels are, right? That's even scarier to me than using my own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's this tremendous amount of pressure that you cannot fail. And we're afraid to fail. Whereas in the corporate world, oh, okay, well, we took a detour and we're going to come back, to
Yeah.
some.
Exactly.
You just don't have the kind of time that you do in the corporate world. I mean, you think like a project is going to take 8 months to complete. Well, actually, you have to do it in 3 weeks
Mm-hmm.
on your own,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
So and there's no, you have to hire your own people if you want a VA or whatever it is. There's just so many things. And one of the things that I really feel for entrepreneurs is this notion of loneliness. It
Yes.
can be really lonely.
Yeah, there's
Um,
a lot of isolation that goes with it because your friends who are still in corporate don't get it. They're like, well, why are you whining? You're the master of your own destiny. It's like,
yeah,
yeah, but I didn't realize it was going to have to be sales and HR and accounting and all the
yeah.
things.
And it's funny because one of the decisions that I made is that I would want people helping me. So I'd want staff, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
but I would never hire anybody full time permanent. Just didn't want to live in that world because what I found is that when I was managing a team of people, I spent 70% of my time managing people as opposed to doing the work that I was really interested in.
Yeah.
So with entrepreneurship, you do get, to choose that. And you do get to work on the stuff that you're really interested in, but there's a lot of nitty gritty with it too.
Yeah.
So
And
I feel
it's
like I'm
really
I'm a
nice.
commercial for not doing the entrepreneurial thing, but that's not the
it
case.
it is kind of spinning that direction
It
right
is,
now,
it
but
is.
there's a lot of upside to it though
There are.
too, because I mean in the corporate world, if you want a raise or bonus or something, you've got to go, hoping that somebody else will be able to see your case, whereas in the entrepreneurial world, you just go out there and prospect some more or create a new product or put on a sale and hey presto.
Yeah, yeah. And what's amazing is that much more so than the corporate world, you are really in charge of your destiny.
Yeah.
And you can go as far as you like. And we all have, the bumps along the road for sure. But there's really, you don't have to get anybody else's approval.
Yeah.
You
Which is a beautiful thing. Once you realize that you've been
know?
sitting waiting for approval, you can change that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And approvals are meant for a reason, and
Yeah.
I get that, but there's so many things that we do in the corporate world that you don't need to do in the entrepreneurial world. You know,
Yeah.
you can be so much more nimble and you can be so much more creative. You can form these amazing partnerships with people without anybody holding you back. You can meet amazing people like I've met you,
Yes,
because of
exactly.
some of the networking that we do, or like-minded women that I want to hang out with and want, to build something with together. As an
Yeah, it's easier to create that core of the five people that are going to most influence you
Yeah,
when you have sovereignty over who you work with.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And we'll talk about it a little bit later, but that's one of the reasons I started What She Said.
Yeah.
And it's exactly right. And I was in another interview yesterday, and we talked about the fact that, same thing that you just said, the five people that, are your circle of influence that you interact with, and you are a product of what's around you. So very much in line with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when you stepped out of corporate into the entrepreneurial world, what was the first venture you went after? Did you go into the consulting or did you go into something a little more, what I would say, larger and more structured and more ambitious?
So I love structure and I dislike structure both at the same time.
A love
So,
hate relationship.
yeah. I'm a hybrid in a lot of ways, but one of the things that used to bug me was this notion of why do we keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results?
Yes.
As Einstein says, that's truly the definition of insanity. And so I was on a quest to change that, and a quest to change, solving for the wrong stuff all the time. So I actually built a success model, and I wrote about it in a book. It was an anthology that I participated in that went on to become a Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller.
Nice.
So it was one of those things that I just felt like I had to start writing and speaking about, because otherwise, how would I get that information out there? Right.
Yeah. Well,
So,
tell us about your success model.
yeah. So it's actually very simple. So everything in life is cyclical, as we know.
Yes.
And I'm all about using the power of the brain to bring us to better wisdom. And to me, everything starts with curiosity. Wisdom
Mm.
starts with curiosity. And I'm unapologetically curious. I ask a lot of questions, but it's not
Yeah.
because I'm trying to,
Curiosity is one of my favorite, what do I want to say, intellectual, emotional positions to take
yeah,
because it moves you forward much better than
yes.
like judgment and some of those other things that we tend to like reach for.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and for me, it's one of my pillars for sure. People don't realize this, but curiosity is actually a strategic move too.
Mm.
And I
Tell us more about that.
well, because when you're curious, you're putting yourself in a position where you don't necessarily know everything,
Mm.
and you allow yourself the opportunity to ask a lot of questions and figure out what it is that you don't know. It allows for discovery and exploration. It allows for, you think about a childlike wonder, or you think
Yeah.
about Einstein and the way their brains work is that you have no expectations, you have no
Mm.
barriers. And I have to tell you, this notion of curiosity, when I realized that that's what drives me, and I made it a deliberate choice of the way I live, has completely changed my life.
Yeah.
Completely changed my
I
life.
love that. One of the other things I've noticed about curiosity, being a strong fan of it as well
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
of an approach, it puts you in a position of humility and it takes your ego out of the equation, which then removes the threat or the challenge to the people that you're dealing with.
It's so true. And
Yeah.
it's funny because I'm writing a book about a lot of this stuff. And we are so simpatico, you and I, because you're absolutely right. And like, let's say, as an example, you and I are having an argument, right? Or we're on completely different sides of the fence. And it happens in every relationship.
Oh, sure. There's always
And
something, whether
yeah,
it's religion or politics or
yeah,
how you deal with your underwear at the end of the day.
exactly. Like there's so many things. And still trying to figure out the last one, by the way. So,
The
but what
little
happens?
ones are sometimes the toughest.
Yeah. And if you even want to call it underwear, right? So,
Yeah.
so but what I was going to say is that if I approach it in a way that, you know what, tell me more because I didn't get there the same way you did. Tell me how you got to that conclusion because I totally didn't see it that way. I'm really curious. I want to learn from what took your mind from point A to point B. And all of a sudden, instead of becoming adversarial, it becomes very collaborative and it changes the dynamic of the relationship. And I've seen that time and time again. So I would like us to be in a world where we're more collaborative versus competitive or adversarial. I'd like us to be in a world where we allow ourselves discovery, even though we may not understand everything. We allow ourselves to explore and figure out what is it because through all of that work, you come up with these little nuggets in terms of the way people think and why they make the decisions that they do. And guess what? That makes you better at being an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Um, so I was going to say marketer as well, because
Well, and you have to be an amazing marketer as an entrepreneur because not only are you marketing to your customers, which is the obvious place that the marketing arrives, but you also are marketing to your initial employees to join into this unknown venture. Who knows what the future is going to unfold? And again, you're marketing to your investors.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And when we look at this, we always think from a marketing standpoint, are you improving your brand? Are you improving yourself? Are you improving your community? Are you improving your university if that's the case? Are you improving your things for your customers? It's like there's so many different angles that you want to look at depending on what situation you're in. But at least your environment and the customer and yourself, like is there growth for all three of those things?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. I'm gonna put a pin in this right now because we are up on our first break already. Can you believe?
wow, that
I
was fast.
know it
Yeah.
goes really fast. So I would like to invite everyone who's joined us as we go to break, take this opportunity to check out the What is Your Number One Leadership Pitfall Quiz at leadershippitfallquiz.com and hang with us. We'll be right back from the break.
Oh, checked it out, the wolf here. Tech is ours and we show no fear. No fear. No fear. No fear.
Thanks for hanging in with us through the break. This is Zofia Morales, and I'm still here with Wandana Puranik. And before the break, you were telling us a little bit about curiosity when we
Yeah.
started talking about your success model. Just remind us, what are the pieces of your success model?
So I was saying that everything in life is cyclical. So just like that, the success model is something that is on repeat. And the main parts of it are really starting with curiosity, moving to exploration, then leading to discovery, then leading to making choices, then leading to adaptability, and finally recalibration. And when you hit recalibration, the curiosity cycle begins again. And it's this cyclical nature, these all of these steps repeated over and over and over again that allow neuroplasticity that's going on in your brain to lead to wisdom.
Yeah.
So the reason I
And
talk
it
about
also, by the way, leads to business success as well.
absolutely. I mean, you're smarter for it, right? Like
Yeah.
that's just the way it is. And it's funny because when I was interviewed for the anthology, I was asked like, what was that one big turning point in your life that changed everything that made you the success that you are today? And I was just remember looking at the guy and thinking like, man, I got nothing.
Yeah, there is rarely one big turning point. I mean, it makes for a great movie.
Yeah, but it's not like that. Life
But
is
it,
not like
yeah,
that.
and well, and it's like the overnight success. It took me 30 years and suddenly overnight I'm a success.
Yeah, imagine that. And so the other thing to me is I was thinking like we push ourselves every time we achieve something else, right? And really, I would hate to think that I have arrived.
It's
To
like,
me,
now what do you do?
that would be so depressing, right? Like, But the fact that it can be cyclical and iterative and progressive and continuous is magical for me. So that's,
Absolutely, because you can do it again and you can do it better and different
yeah,
and yeah, all
yeah.
the things.
So I started talking about that, and I ended up speaking in various locations, a lot of them really big academic stages like Harvard and Stanford and Cambridge and Oxford and all of those places. I continue to speak today. In fact, I'm going to Iceland, speak in Iceland
Oh,
next.
fun.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll tell you how that came about too. It's an interesting story, but I just want to close the loop on this because as I was going through this, and I was working on about 5 books at the time too, because that's just the kind of mind that I have. I like to do different things. I'm sure there's some sort of a mental condition that,
Yeah, I share whatever that
yeah,
is. I have to have like a million balls up in the air. If
yeah,
I just
yeah,
have one, it's like focus on one thing. It's like
yeah,
I will let that sucker drop and roll away. It's just
yeah.
not engaging enough.
No, it's not. But it's something cool to come back to over and over again, right?
Yeah.
But I was doing all this stuff, and then I felt a darkness coming at me at
Mm,
the same time for about 6 months. And then eventually, at the end of that 6 months, I mean, I can say it's 6 months because there was an end to it. Now I can say it's 6 months. But at that point, I didn't know how long this thing was going to go on.
right.
And I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's gonna rock your world for a
Yeah.
minute.
But you know what? The funniest thing is that everybody says it's all relative, and it's true because if I had not felt that darkness and all of a sudden I was hit with this bomb, I would be like, holy cow, what the heck just happened? But because I felt it coming, it was almost a relief to know
It's
what
like,
it was.
thank you. I know what it
Yeah.
is at
Yeah.
least. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, oh, okay. All right. Anyway, that's like another project. So let's just move through it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Check
And
off
that's
all the boxes.
and yeah, and I was still traveling and speaking and doing all of that.
And did it play out that way?
That what that
That you just kind of move through it, check off the
well,
boxes and
it was until I'll tell you, I went through surgery and then I traveled some more and spoke some more and then I came back and went through pathology and did the same thing. When I started on chemo, I lost all my hair. This was very recently. This was only a year and a half ago.
yeah.
And lost all my hair, was losing weight. At one point I lost like 10 pounds in a week. Like it was
Whoa, that's a
dangerous,
lot of weight
dangerous.
lost really
Because
fast.
I just couldn't eat of stuff that was going on anyway. And then I was slowly starting to lose my ability to breathe.
Oh,
But
bad, very bad.
very bad. But I'm one of those people that I don't complain about anything because this is not the worst it could be, right? And I just thought, oh, you
It's
know what?
it
It's chemo.
not breathing is pretty
You know?
close to the worst it could be.
But you know, I was getting no glucose to my brain because I wasn't eating. I
Yeah,
was getting no oxygen because I wasn't breathing well.
which doesn't lead to good decision making.
No. And so I was kind of out of commission in terms of a lot that I could do.
Yeah.
And I tried to work through it, like, but I could work for spurts of time. There was one time where I worked for 12 hours trying to, do this chemo while I was working. That wasn't a good idea,
Yeah.
but you don't know until you try. And then what happened was towards the end of my chemo, I ended up getting an infection.
Uh-oh.
I had a cracked tooth that got infected, and I knew what a tooth infection felt like. So I knew that that's what it was. A lot of pain. And the tooth was cracked front to back. So every time you bit down, the tooth,
It just split. Yeah.
yeah, it kind of split. So it was excruciating pain. Anyway, so we had to go to the hospital because you
Yeah.
can't have cancer and chemo and have an infection.
Yeah, no, that's
Um,
bad because
it's really
your
bad.
immune system's depressed already.
Yeah,
It's coming off its back foot.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But something very interesting happened, if you want to call it that.
Interesting is probably a measured description.
Yeah. But I mean, this is going to sound crazy, but I actually find this whole story fascinating. This the whole wait, just let me tell you the story
Yeah,
because
tell the story. I'm sure we will find it fascinating.
so I'm in the ER. Finally, after 7 hours, I get to see the head of the department. That's who ended up seeing me. Immediately after that, out of nowhere, it felt like lightning fast, everything changed. So I had a bed flying in, I was being undressed, I was getting a gown put on, I was new sheets on the bed, I was having my vitals checked again, all my clothes were wrapped up and, given to my husband and daughter who
Mhm.
were there. And,
And they're plugging you into everything they can plug
plugging
you
me into
into
everything. And all of a sudden they start IVs. And I'm thinking I was going to go to the ER, get some meds, get a bit of oxygen, and off I
and
go.
go home. Yeah.
And so that was so not the case. But what happened was they put the oxygen mask on me, and because I couldn't breathe very well, it made me super nervous. It felt too
Yes.
tight.
Like
And then I,
claustrophobic, sort
yeah,
of.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then I threw it off. And after that, I don't remember anything.
Mm.
And so what happened was I was admitted that night. Huh. And it was over the next couple of days, the infection went away because I was on pretty heavy antibiotics,
Yeah, I'll bet.
but I got worse.
Oh,
And
well,
I got
now that's an
worse.
unexpected twist.
And I just kept getting worse to the point where
Yeah.
I finally went into a coma.
Oh, my.
I was in a coma.
Did they figure out why you were getting worse?
Not really. It's funny because I had an incredible ICU team, and one of the gentlemen was like the lead guy on ventilators in the world, for example.
Oh, okay.
And even one of the other doctors, they sat down with my husband and said, "Can we level with you?" And it's like, "Yeah, sure," because you
So,
can't.
yeah,
You know, you can't do
I
anything
wouldn't
about
want you to not level with
it. Yeah,
me.
yeah. But it was one of those situations where they said, oftentimes in respiratory diseases, this was kind of wild. We don't really know what it is, but we know how to control it.
Hmm.
So that's what happened. And
Okay.
so when you say, do they know what it is? There's a hypothesis on a couple of things. It's either a reaction to one of the chemo drugs this severe. I would probably be case number one.
Yeah.
Or it could have been something that was lying dormant in me that sprung up as a result of my chemo and cancer and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
Or maybe this was the darkness that was supposed to come.
Who knows? It came
Who
along
knows?
with it.
And when I say I was in a coma, I was intubated. I was on a
Mhm.
ventilator. My hands were tied to the railings. My feet were bandaged. My eyes were taped shut. I was paralyzed. And I had IVs going from my neck, like probably about 10, because they had
Yeah.
to pull them out when I was conscious, down to my wrist. So it was pretty severe.
Yeah.
And I had the most amazing ICU team because they ended up solving for the problem. Sorry, they ended up
Yay.
solving for the outcome.
Yeah.
And
Not the symptoms.
yeah, and that's the reason that I lived. I also contracted something called ARDS, which is acute respiratory distress syndrome.
Mhm.
Normally, when you look at a scan of lungs, they're black because there's
Yeah.
air.
Hmm.
Mine were white. So
Yeah.
completely,
Fibrosis and
completely
yeah.
obstructed. So I was in a coma for 2 weeks. And I have to tell you, Sophia, I had the best coma ever. I
You don't
love
hear people say that
No, I
often.
know. And the thing is that a lot of people have really scary experiences during coma. Like very, very scary. And mine was like I was flying like Superman through different galaxies and realms and landing in places like a fly on the wall and seeing all these possibilities. And I was like living my success model,
Yeah.
going through and discover. Anyway, it was incredible. And I ended up being in the hospital for about 2 months. And 3 days after I came out of the hospital, I did my TEDx talk.
Yes.
And
And I love that. This is one of the things that I love about your story because so often people are like, oh, I've got this terrible thing that happened. I have to cancel my life. And you don't have to cancel your life. You just have to be discerning
yeah,
about what you're moving forward with and continue in a determined fashion.
it's interesting because people often ask me, do I believe everything happens for a reason?
Mm,
And I don't. But what
okay.
I, but what I do believe is that whatever does happen to you, make sure you give it a purpose. Otherwise, it would have happened in vain, and that would be tragic. That's a
Yes.
much bigger tragedy than having learned something from it and moving forward, right?
Right. Or taking a gift away from it, which a lot of times I've noticed looking back on my own life and having worked with a lot of clients over the years,
Hmm.
there's always a gift in there if you go looking for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I can't explain a lot of tragedies that happen, but I can say that because it happened, make sure you give it a purpose by honoring it. Let's say you have a death in the family, honor that individual. Like,
Absolutely.
how would they want you to live? And a lot of people often say it's like hundreds and hundreds of hands touched my one life to keep it alive. You
Yes.
better be damn sure I'm going to live in a way that honors what they did for me.
There you
Um,
go.
and my belief is if you're here, your work on this earth is not done. So
Amen.
get up and do it.
Get
So
up and do it. Go out there, even if you don't know what it is.
exactly.
The interesting thing is, you really only find your purpose in hindsight. And what I've found in my life is following the things that draw me puts me on purpose, whether it makes logical sense or not. It always puts me on purpose.
I think that's such an important point. And I don't know if people realize this enough because oftentimes people go, "What is my purpose? What's my purpose?" They go searching for my purpose. But you don't actually figure it out until you've gone through an experience to help you get there.
Exactly.
It's
It's
not,
like driving a car. You can't sit in the driveway
yeah,
and figure out getting to your destination. You
yeah,
have to drive the car and
yeah,
actually do it.
yes.
Yeah.
And so it's exactly what you said. It's purpose doesn't come at the beginning. Purpose comes when you actually experience and push yourself into that scenario that you realize, okay, this was my life's purpose. I have a purpose in my life, but it's not, it doesn't have to be just one either. You know,
Yeah, exactly. I know
so
a lot of people feel like they need this grand, overarching, passionate purpose
yeah,
thing. And there are people who have that, and God love them. I'm happy for them. I'm not one of those people.
yeah,
I'm one of these multi curious kind of people. And I'm intrigued and I'm challenged by this, and I'm intrigued and want to pursue that. And I've come to accept that there's a reason I'm built this way. And I
yeah,
should just roll with that and not worry about, is there some grand uniting purpose?
yeah. I agree. And all the little drops make up the ocean.
Yes,
So let's not forget that. And sometimes we think it's trivial, but it's actually important turning point for each of us. And
absolutely.
everybody's got issues. Everybody's got something. I hate it when people say, "Oh, I didn't have time for that." Actually, you did. You just didn't make time for it. And this
Yeah.
is the lesson I learned the hard way when I was
Oh,
in.
yeah.
And it's like everybody's got the same amount of time. So
Hmm.
it just depends on what you want to spend it on.
Well,
And
and then there's the principle of the task expands to fill the amount of time that you give it. I
yes,
went through this with my husband recently. He had a client that was like sucking up all of his time to the point
yeah,
that he wasn't getting other clients.
yeah,
And it's like, look, you need to tip this on its head, and you need to do your business first. Carve out that first hour of the day, do the things you need to do outreach and land clients and that kind of stuff before you
yeah,
get sucked into their garbage.
yeah, yeah.
Because they will expand to fill whatever time you leave for them.
Yeah, I love working with people in groups
Yeah.
a lot. I think that there is so much wisdom and beauty and magic that comes out of working in groups because I think sometimes, we think one-on-one is best.
Yeah.
And if you have a really acute question, I get it, but you can bring a lot of those things into if you have an awesome mastermind,
Yeah.
it's incredible what you can do. So,
Absolutely. I think that's amazing for coaching. The work he does is very one on one. So that's not an
yeah.
option for him.
And I respect that. That's not the answer for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we are up on our second break already. Can
Yeah.
you believe? And so, again, if you haven't had a chance to take the number one leadership pitfall quiz, you can go out and make that happen over this break. It's at leadershippitfallquiz.com. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the three principles of solving the impossible. And we're going to circle back to the one skill that has the power to change everything. So hang with us. We'll be right back.
Oh, shout it loud, the wolf here. Tech is ours and we show no fear. No fear. No fear. No fear.
Thanks for hanging in with us through the break. This is Zofia Morales. I'm still here with the amazing and wonderful Vandana Puranik. And so I know you have kind of three principles for solving the
Yeah.
impossible. I
Yeah.
love that, solving the impossible, because so many people come and tell you, oh, well, that's not possible.
Yeah.
So, what are these three principles?
Well, everything is impossible until you do it.
Amen.
So don't ever let anybody think you're living like your things are impossible. It may not be the exact way that you envisioned it, but it's not impossible. And I teach a lot about how to create options and choices for yourself and live limitlessly, because that's in the end what it's about. So I'm writing a whole book on this, but
Love it.
the three main principles that I talk about, and I actually did this in my TEDx talk as well, are threefold. And the first thing is, and we've started to talk about it already, is solving for the outcome and not the problem.
Right.
And don't want to become problem centric. You don't want to be in a situation where you can't expand your thinking ability and take in new information. And solving for the problem, how do you know it's the right problem? How do
Yeah,
you,
exactly.
how do you know there isn't more than one? How do you know they're not tied together? How do you know that it's something that you haven't seen yet? In my case, it was
Right. Well,
something.
and the problem might be unrelated to the outcome that you really want to have when it
Exactly.
comes down to the end of the
Exactly.
day. Yeah.
That's why, are you even solving for the right problem, right? So just take the idea of solving for the problem out and start with the outcome in mind. What is your actual goal? My goal in my case was for them to save my life, not get rid of the infection. The infection was one problem. But guess what? They thought if they had stopped, just, hey, we've treated the infection, now you can go
Yeah,
home.
we did antibiotics. She's good to go.
Yeah,
You weren't good to go.
I
Yeah.
wasn't good to go. So they had to solve for the outcome. And that's what my team did. The second thing we also talked about is suspending yourself in a state of limitless curiosity. And we talked about the fact that it's a strategic move, not just, hey, I'm really curious now. It's not that.
Yeah, it's not idle curiosity.
No,
It's
active versus
active
passive.
curiosity.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's active versus passive. It's non-judgmental.
Hmm.
It takes away any barriers that you might have in your mind, because you're just being curious. That's it. And it really, I don't get angry. I have no expectations. So I'm not disappointed.
Yeah.
Um, like it takes away.
The other thing that it counters is this tendency as a human being to have that confirmation bias, right? Because so
Yes.
often we go out into the world looking for the evidence to prove ourselves right,
Yeah.
as opposed to looking at all the evidence and finding out what it's telling us.
Yeah. I mean, what about thinking about, this is the way it's always been done,
Yes. Oh God, that one.
right? And you're going to face that in the corporate world,
Oh,
but
sure.
you're going to face it a lot in the non-corporate world as well. Whether you're a philanthropist, whether you're an artist, whether you're a chef, whether you're a saxophone player, whether you're a motorcycle rider, like there's just so many things. Like it's not just business. It's a way to conduct your life. And I really want to make that clear, because
Yeah,
we're going way beyond business here. We're
absolutely.
talking about a shift in the way you think. And
Well,
the
and
last,
here's the thing with business. Business is the most intense personal development program you're ever going to get into when you go into entrepreneurship.
mhm, well said,
It's
couldn't agree.
just the fact. It's not about the marketing, it's not about the numbers, it's not about the people management. It's about how you as a person express out into the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so very much so. The third thing I talk about, this is like a huge thing for me, is all of these things are intellectual humility. Always embracing intellectual humility, because there's the Dunning-Kruger effect is the effect where we think we know more than we do.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. And we all have it
And
in spades.
we have it in spades, but there's people who will come out and he's like, oh, he's a Dunning-Kruger guy, or she's Dunning-Kruger woman. Like it's because it happens all the time. And to realize that we actually don't know everything, and we can use that. It takes a lot of courage to ask for help.
And
That's
to admit that maybe you don't have the answer.
my team, my ICU team. There were, I mean, you can imagine the level of
Education and
knowledge.
brains in that room. Yes.
But there were technicians, there were research associates, it's a teaching hospital, so there were residents and all kinds of stuff, and all kinds of expertise. And at one point, they were really trying to figure out, they were monitoring about 250 markers, like every 5 minutes. It was pretty intense. And they would meet every morning, like their little rolling desks would all come in. So all 10 of them
Yes.
would come into my
With
room.
their
And
laptops and their
yeah,
rolling desks.
yeah.
Yes.
But this is something I didn't know. It's something that my husband, taught me, who was hugely instrumental in why I'm alive today, too. And he also had embraced intellectual humility, because he just kept asking questions and kept being curious. And like realizing I don't know a lot. And people started to think that he was one of the doctors after a couple weeks. So
Yeah,
this is
because
a
he'd
guy who's in
absorbed so
finance.
much.
Yeah. But this is a guy in finance who knew nothing really about medicine and science as such. But it was one of the cases that he told me about that one of the really elite doctors, she said that I'm like, this is like, what is it that we can do that's different, or whatever the question was. And one of the research technicians who was from Singapore actually said, and I had an international team, said in Singapore we did it this way and it seemed to work really well and we use these belts and da-da-da." And her response was, even though she was one of those elite doctors, she said, "Tell me more."
Mhm.
That's all it takes.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you mean by intellectual humility. Is
Yeah.
tell me more, share your experience.
And
Yeah,
I have to tell you, my parents are, both specialty surgeons. I've lived around the medical community a lot and talk about the extreme of not having intellectual humility, right?
oh, well, people die. Yeah, I mean, in medicine, there's nothing clearer than the cost of that kind of ego.
You're absolutely right. I actually write about it in my book too. And the thing is that if it works in the extreme sense of the medical field, it can work for you,
Absolutely.
right?
So, having gone through these three principles for solving the impossible, quote
Yeah.
unquote, let's pay off on our promise
Yeah.
from the top of the interview. So, what is the one skill that has the power to change everything? And I think I might
So,
know.
oh, I think we're probably getting there from all the discussion that we've had. So, this is a skill, financial management, like mindfulness and mental health, that were never taught in school. But
Yeah,
this
boy.
one in particular has the ability to change everything, and that is creative problem solving. It sounds like a very generic term, but it's not. And we use it in every single thing that we do. If you just stop to think that I don't have to accept it just because it's the way it's always been done. If I want a different result, what do I have to do differently to precipitate that result?
Yeah.
And if I apply this sort of thinking in everything that I'm doing, that maybe where things could be better,
Hmm.
it's very, very simple. Like even we've had nannies for our kids. And that's not some elitist thing. It's just because we were both trying to work and we had three
Yeah.
kids, etc. So we needed the help and appreciated the help. Very much, they would very much focus on, okay, this is the only thing we know and this is the answer and this is what my friend told me and this is what the other nannies told me, so you have to do it this way. And I was blown away. I was like, did you not think of any other options?
Yeah.
Well,
Surely there's a wide
surely there's
range
a,
of ways to
yeah,
approach this.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they hadn't.
Yeah.
So to me, use creativity in, if you decide that that's the problem you're going to solve, really use creativity. And that goes alongside with critical thinking. So
Absolutely.
it's kind of hand in hand. But that's the one skill that I talk about a lot because people don't often give it as much importance as it deserves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I know you brought a gift for the listeners today. Would you like
Yeah,
to share what your gift is?
yeah. So I'm working on a book. My book is called Might. It's going to launch very soon. It's might as in a double entendre. So might as in the power, so the power to solve the
Yeah.
impossible, and might as in possibility. So how might we solve this? Where do
Yeah.
you go when nothing seems to work or you don't know where to begin? And just like the principles that I talked about in terms of what I spoke about in my TEDx talk, this goes into a lot of other ideas that you probably never have thought of. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to offer an opportunity to get people on the pre-sale list
I
so
love
that
that.
if anybody's interested that they can do that right up front.
I like that. So if you check the show notes below, there will be a link where you can be notified of the launch date and get in line for your coffee.
Yeah, it'll be great. It'll be great. And there might be a little something else too, but I'm not going to say.
All right. And an extra surprise for those who go on the list. I like that.
Yeah.
Surprises are fun. So now, with the last couple of minutes we have here, why
Mhm.
don't you share what are you reading right now? What's on Wandana's bedside table?
You will laugh if I tell you.
Go for
So
it.
I have you can imagine I have very diverse reading that I
Habits.
do. Yeah, reading habits. Thank you. Habits, genres, whatever. So I read a lot of thought leadership
Yeah.
and I read billionaire mafia romance.
Billionaire Mafia romance. I love it.
Those are both genres, by the way.
Yes.
It's like it's not a book called Billionaire Mafia Romance.
No, it's an actual
But
genre.
but it's I don't know, I just get the biggest kick out of them. And for me, when I read, I either read to really learn something or I read to lose myself. It's like watching a
Yeah,
movie, right?
exactly.
So it's such a different world than I would ever live, but it's so exciting. And I love, like, you're going to laugh when I say this, but some of the strategies that these guys use and some of the, like the phrases, even, it's like, oh my God, this is really good. Like, I got to write that down. Now, I'm going to be honest. Oftentimes I have to sit down with the dictionary because
Hey, it's all
I'm
good. The
unfamiliar.
dictionary helps you expand that vocabulary.
Yeah.
Ain't no shame in using one of those.
But but yeah, so those are the two genres that I read, and I read really fast. So there's never, hey, this is what I'm reading now, because by the time I tell you that, it'll be done.
It's off the table and the next thing's
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, very good.
Yeah.
So I would like to thank you so much for joining us here
Oh,
today.
thank
I've
you.
really enjoyed our talk. It's been fabulous. If you have a final words of wisdom for those who joined us today, what are your final words of wisdom for the female founders out there?
So first of all, come join me. We're doing great things. You can look
Absolutely.
me up
And you can find
on,
all her contact
yeah,
information below.
yeah.
So easy to find.
There's three words that I live by. One, surprisingly, is curiosity. The
Yeah, we're all
second,
stunned by that one.
yeah, I know. The second one is deliberateness. So everything I do is deliberate. I don't do it unless I want to do it, and I'm deliberate about doing it. So and I'm like that about a lot of things, and I'm getting more and more so that way. And the third thing is wit, as in
Hmm.
being witty, because
Yes,
I think humor is a huge part of my life. And if there was one thing that I could say to everyone, is to stay curious, my friends.
I love that. And on that note, I will thank everyone for joining us here today and invite you to join us back next week where we talk about resilience and how you can conquer stress in the digital age.
Awesome.
So until then, go out, be bold, be beautiful, and be amazing.
Absolutely. Bye.